I realized that I went from victim to survivor, and I no longer wanted to simply survive. I wanted to thrive, and I deserved to thrive. So as I began to study and learn and reflect on my personal life, as I begin to listen to my elders and learn from them, it's where my hope came from. I went from feeling like a victim to a survivor to now becoming a thriver. And you become a thriver when I'm going to change the way I look at things. Things going to change the way that they look. So therefore, when you become a thriver, you don't serve time. You allow time to serve you.
What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In-N-Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right, welcome back, Nightmare Success In-N-Out listeners. This is where what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? And folks, don't forget to follow, subscribe, share this thing out, like it up, comment. It really helps the show. Very much appreciate that. So who are we talking to today on Nightmare Success? We are talking to Bruce Bryan. And I saw Bruce on the Joe Rogan Experience. I thought, man, I gotta get a hold of this man. I started following him on Instagram and we connected and man, what a story this guy has. Tell you a little bit about Bruce. Imagine being 23 years old and told you may never go home again. One accusation, one conviction, and suddenly your future disappears behind concrete walls and steel doors. At the age of 23, Bruce Bryan was wrongly incarcerated for murder and spent more than 29 years in maximum security prisons across New York State, including the famous Sing Sing prison. His imprisonment resulted from a corrupt prosecutor and the misfortune of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. During those years, Bruce pursued personal growth, embraced education, and found a deeper purpose. He became a student of life, a mentor to others, and a fierce advocate of truth. Upon his release, after receiving clemency, Bruce emerged as a survivor and a visionary leader. Today, he's a global change movement strategist and a dedicated human justice advocate, using his voice to confront systematic oppression, advance reform worldwide. His journey is a powerful testament to resilience, purpose, and the unshakable pursuit of justice. You know, we talk a lot about the rebuilding after incarceration on this show, finding a job, contributing to the community, finding purpose. But I recently came across a book that reframes the entire conversation in a way many haven't considered. It's called Second Chance Economics by Nevin Shetty, and it just debuted as a #1 new release on Amazon. This isn't a book about criminal justice reform. It's a book about economic potential. Shetty starts with an overlooked reality. There are 80 million Americans with a criminal record. That's a massive underutilized talent pool and one whose barriers to employment cost our economy a staggering $1.2 trillion a year. What I love about this book is the approach. Shetty uses data to show how second chance hiring isn't just a social good, it's a competitive advantage. It lowers turnover, fills labor gaps, and creates a virtuous cycle of growth. Whether you're a business leader, a policymaker, or someone who believes in reframing the narrative around justice-impacted individuals, Second Chance Economics is a must-read. Pick up your copy today on Amazon. I want to recognize our show sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. You know, who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots looking for a car? Then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that hassle of getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. It's the new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Welcome in, Bruce Bryan. How are you doing, man?
Thank you so much. And I think I need to have you introduce me every time I give a talk or every time I'm a keynote or something. That was a great introduction. It's an honor to be here, Brent. I'm sorry that it took this long for us to get together, but I love what you're doing. I support what you're doing. Nightmare Success In-N-Out is brilliant. And the fact that you're sharing these stories, these nightmares that so many people don't know about, are unaware of. You know, we say New York is a big city of dreams, but what they don't know is that New York has a tremendous amount of nightmares to, you know, wrongful convictions. While Illinois leads the way, New York
Yeah.
is not far behind.
Well, I know you've got a T-shirt on there that you're advocating for somebody right now. Who is that?
This is a brother by the name of Keith Lamar. And I tell you a story how I actually got introduced to Keith. Sitting in a cell in Sing Sing, I picked up a bunch of newspapers that were on top of the garbage. They were being thrown out, a bunch of New York Times. I took all these papers in the cell and I would read them over the weekend. I would read every paper. And I came across this article in the New York Times about Keith Lamar being wrongfully convicted and doing music across the world, doing spoken word with a band of musicians from New York, fighting for him, fighting for his life. You know, Keith's been in solitary confinement at the time for almost 30 years for what is known as the Lucasville riot that happened in Ohio, where it resulted in about 10 deaths. It was a riot between the Muslims and the staff because they wanted to give tuberculosis tests. And back at this time in 1993, you know, the TB test was a lot different than it is now. And for religious reasons, the Muslim brothers decided that they didn't want to take it. And one thing led to another, and it resulted in a riot. Keith Lamar was never a part of that riot. Keith Lamar was not Muslim. Keith Lamar had absolutely nothing to do with the riot. Of course, you had some guys in prison that wanted to get a secret deal to get out early for early release. I'm sure you're familiar with those guys, Brent. And, you know, they lied on Keith Lamar, and Keith Lamar has been sentenced to death. He had 18 years. He went in with 18 years that he pled guilty to. So that tells you that if he did something, he had no problem pleading guilty to what he did. And during the course of him serving that 18 years, this riot happened. And now he's been sentenced to death. And he has a death date of January 13, 2027. And we're calling on the governor of Ohio, Governor DeWine, to stop the execution, to overturn Keith's conviction, and to seek justice for Keith Lamar, who is completely innocent. He deserves not just to have his conviction overturned, but he deserves to be free.
Yeah.
We do not want Ohio to execute a wrongfully convicted man. So we implore anyone within the sound of my voice that resides in Ohio or that knows the governor of Ohio, please write your governor, reach out to your people in Ohio and tell them this man is innocent. Reopen his case, overturn his case. The prosecutor in this case has been in severe trouble. He was convicted by an all-white jury. I can go on and on and on and on and on.
Well, I tell you, that's what I love about you guys with the wrongful conviction, because you could come out so bitter. And I've had guys on like Marvin Cotton Jr., Darrell Woods Sr., different guys that I can think of that spent a lot of time in the wrong place for the wrong crime, being wrongly convicted. But so many of you guys really get out and become such powerful voices. And it's such a testament to, man, I don't know what you call that. It's a belief system of not being left at rock bottom. You step out of it and you find, places and hope to help people and through your life experience. Going back a little bit, Bruce, to your story. Where'd you grow up? What was your life like growing up as a kid?
I grew up in Lower East Side Manhattan during my early years until about 9 or 10 years old. My parents had come to America when they migrated from Antigua and Dominica, West Indies. They met as a young couple in the West Indies. My mother's from Dominica. My father is from Antigua. And they moved to America and after being married on the island of Barbuda. And when they moved to America, we were living in Manhattan. So I spent my early years in Lower East Side Manhattan. And then I moved to Queens in around 78. I had to be about 10 years old. So 78, when you move to Queens and my father and parents had managed to buy a home, you come here around 78 and you're still young, you're 9, 10 years old. Then you get to be a teenager, 13, 14, 15 years old. And here comes crack cocaine. So you begin to see things that you normally didn't see. You begin to see what appeared to be success from the streets. And you're impressionable, you're young. You see some things that glitter that are not necessarily gold. And you see your parents struggle day in and day out. So you kind of become a little attracted to finding a way to make ends meet to help your parents out, as well as to do for yourself, right? To get material things that you need. Food, shelter, and clothing, right? You had shelter, you had a home, you always had food, you always had clothes, but you still, you saw an opportunity or what you thought was an opportunity to hustle. So I began dipping and dabbling with selling marijuana. Then, of course, selling a little crack cocaine. One thing led to another. We become involved in the streets a little. And prior to my arrest, when I hustled as a young person, it was really all about just providing for myself and getting a material thing that you need. You never in your wildest dreams would you imagine that one day you'll wake up and you're going on an errand to change the young lady you were seeing at the time, her niece's costume. And all of a sudden, a shooting happens. Right? And next thing you know, you're wanted for being a part of this shooting. Meanwhile, you had absolutely zero involved. And you're arrested and you're charged with murder and convicted in 1996.
Let's go into that a little bit, Bruce, because I can't imagine, because that's everybody's worst nightmare, right? Is to be doing something and
to be arrested and convicted for life. To be arrested is one thing. It's a nightmare in and of itself to be arrested. But to be arrested and be charged is definitely.
Did you know of the shooting? Was the shooting around where you lived? Like, how did they wrap you up?
I was at the scene around the area. I saw people that I knew that it was an open drug market, but you see people all over on the corners hustling. And, you go, there was a party store over there where we can get party stuff for the young girl. And we was also going to Woolworth. So Woolworth is not far from where this happened. And so you see someone and you're talking to them. Within seconds, guys come around the corner, go inside of a beauty salon and come out with guns drawn. And then a shooting happens. And from there, everyone disappears. No one is actually standing around and watching bullets fly. Once you see people draw guns and, everyone begins to flee. So during the course of that,
how long did it last from that time the shooting happened to where you're pulled in as a suspect?
It was a day or two before I was wanted as a suspect and asked to come in as a suspect. And with the fear of God in me, I decided that wouldn't be in my best interest, So there weren't any massive manhunts or inclinations that I would be charged and convicted. But just, when you come up in the neighborhoods I come up in, you know what happens to young black men when they go into the precinct. My older brothers, went into the precincts for lying up before as young people. And so, you say, I'm not dealing with that. And then next thing you know, a friend of yours by the name of Clarence, who was not even anywhere near the crime scene. He was at home and you see him on the news that night being arrested and being charged. And so the first thing came to my mind is, why would they charge him? He wasn't even there. I didn't see him. And I grew up with him. I know him since junior high school. So if they're charging him and if they're arresting him and charging him, you can only imagine what they're going to do to somebody that was around them. And then to hear them say that they were looking for me. My family actually told me, a guy I grew up with that I call family actually told me, listen, the cops went by your house. Because I had no idea. I literally went to Red Lobster after that and ate and got chocolate cake because the young lady I was seeing at the time wanted chocolate cake. So we went out to eat the very same day, not knowing anyone was shot or anything. And then when you are arrested some months later and charged, you have a prosecutor by the name of John Scarpa, who was later arrested and charged for the same misconduct.
So that's the big part of the story too. There's a a prosecutor in this story that isn't a good guy, and he thinks that he can wrap people up because they're in the drug trade, and what difference does it make? So he can get a conviction.
Yeah, and anything that I'm saying, people can go and look up former Queens prosecutor John Scarpa and see some of the cases that he had that were overturned. Homicides. People versus Nathan May, people versus Gary Stedman, countless others. This guy was notorious.
Bruce, what did they say to you when they brought you in? Knowing that you weren't a part of this, how did they say that you were a part of it? How did they?
Didn't say. They just said when they arrested me, it was, we want you down here for questioning on homicide. And didn't ask me one question when I got to the precinct. I actually had a lawyer at the time that said,
Okay.
don't question me in any shape or form for Fifth Amendment purposes. And then went against what my lawyer said and put me in a lineup with someone dealing with, some people that we know to be substance abuse users, and granted them some type of immunity, right? Throughout, of course, these are the deals that the police and the prosecutors make. And so and they picked me out of the lineup. And then after that, I was shocked.
So did they offer you a plea deal? I mean, did they say, hey, we've got you for this and we're going to offer you this? Or
they offered me a plea deal to testify against my co-defendant, Clarence, who wasn't even there. They offered me a plea deal. They said, listen, if you testify against Clarence Smith, we'll give you 7 years, 8 years. Just testify against him because we know he's the ringleader. Farthest thing from the truth, complete lie. And I, of course, told my attorney at the time, who also was seeking psychiatric treatment by the name of Reginald Tao. I had no idea until 20 years later he was under psychiatric treatment because he had been slashed by his previous client. This was my attorney representing him. When he asked me, Clarence is sitting next to me at trial, and he says, in court, and he says, listen, they want to offer you 7 or 8 years if you just testify against Clarence and say that, he ordered this stuff to happen. And I said to Reginald Tao that he should ask, my specific words to him was to ask John Scarpa to have his mother testify and take the plea deal, because I don't do that. I don't lie on people. And those are my words, verbatim, right? You ask your mother to testify against him, because that's not what I do. And it may sound vile or vulgar for your listeners, but the reality is people want you to be co-conspirators with organizing lies and deceits in order to secure a conviction. And in society, they always pit us against each other and say, well, you say he did this, or you say he did that. They want you to co-op and be a part of the system, And
so how did this progress? They clearly take you, you say you're not going to do a plea. Obviously you don't want to do that.
And you lay on you sit on Rikers Island for almost 3 years.
What? You're locked up 3 years waiting for a trial.
On Rikers Island. And they come to you on more than one occasion. Say, why don't you come and work with us to testify against Bryan?
And Rikers Island is not somewhere you want to be. A lot of people want to get out of there to say whatever they can say to get out of that place.
I mean, when they took him out for a polygraph, they took Clarence out for a polygraph examination and brought him back and then tried to say that it was inconclusive. They approached me even then around that time. Would you work and testify against Clarence? And I said, why would I lie on somebody that wasn't even there? I'm not going to do your job for you. Right? I told you I didn't do this. Now, if this is the process that we have to go through, but men, where I come from, men that grew up as being men. My father was a man's man. We don't lie on other people to save our ass, especially when we're being falsely charged and falsely accused. Right?
So what was the trial like?
The trial was horrific. Clarence and I sat side by side for weeks and weeks and weeks. At the time, we were smoking cigarettes. We were chain smoking at the time because it was a way of dealing with the stress. We're going back and forth to court. My sister's a court officer at the time, working the court, so I'm seeing her all the time. My family is coming to court. And, somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm always hearing, not guilty. I'm always saying that the truth is going to prevail because I didn't do it. When you know you didn't do something, you kind of have that on your
Yeah,
side.
you have that as a hope.
Yeah, you have truth on your side. Despite knowing countless guys. I mean, I know guys that were on Rikers Island and it was so rough for them that they pled guilty, even despite saying that they didn't do the crime, right? I know guys that were literally innocent and pled guilty just to get off of Rikers Island because it's that bad. It was that bad. At the time I was there were 20,000 men in this penal colony. 20,000. This is in the 90s. When New York State prison population went up to about 77,000. We're now down to less than 35,000, I think. So less than half of what it was when I was upstate. That's a message for our governor, meaning to let her know that she can close some more prisons. Some more prisons need to be closed in New York State.
So Bruce, how long did that trial last?
That trial lasted about 6 weeks.
So it was a long trial.
Long trial. About 4 weeks.
Yeah.
4 weeks. There were some discrepancies in the middle of the trial that I think caused it to be prolonged. But for the most part, it lasted about a month. I was in trial with about a month.
What were you thinking as this was going along? Did you think that things were going your way, or did you think that it was already cooked?
Initially, you think that, as I said, truth is on your side, and you trust that God will allow truth to prevail. Right? I was a man of faith, as I am today, a man of prayer, a spiritual man, a man of hope. I mean, understanding that, there's a level of resistance that comes with being hopeful, right? When
they come back to you after this long trial, jury goes in, I don't know how long they deliberated. They come back and they say guilty, and you get a sentence for the rest of your life. What goes through one's mind when that happens? I'm asking this because I'm somebody to get out a 5-year sentence, and it took my breath away. Getting the rest of your life looking at something, what goes through your mind, knowing that you didn't do it?
Deep sadness. What for me, it was. I remained hopeful, right?
Yeah.
I remained hopeful, but as you said, it knocks the breath out of you. It knocks the wind out your chest, and you become a bit depressed and saddened by the entire system because you feel like the system failed you, right? A system that
right,
that you always knew.
Yeah, that's depressing.
Yeah, that you always knew the system didn't work. At least it didn't work for poor Black and brown people in the communities I come from. But you were always hopeful that, all right, things would come together. So there was deep sadness, deep depression. I mean, countless sleepless nights where you cry yourself to sleep. Countless. No, not weeks, not months, hundreds, thousands of days where you cry yourself to sleep. But even in the midst of that, you realize that you have to figure this out. You have to figure out, how am I going to live day to day? Because one thing is, if you allow sadness to consume you, you fall into a state of depression, and we know where that leads to. That often can lead to suicide. And the other thing is, if you allow yourself to become bitter, you understand that bitterness only consumes the vessel that contains it. So you don't want to become bitter. So early on, you figure out, well, how do I do this? And you begin to devour books that speak to self-development, books that speak to how you can transcend, where you are. Your mind can go to any place you want it to be. And you realize that life is really about how you view things, your mind, your mindset. Life is about the mindset that you have.
All about the mindset. Yeah.
It's all about your mindset. And you begin to realize, one of the things I put on the cell wall was change your mind, you change your life. I also put, I am not my past, I am not my mistakes. And I also put truth shall always prevail, right? It may not prevail when you want it to. It may not happen overnight, but you don't want to become bitter and you don't want to become sad.
I think that's such a, and this show goes into 1,500 prisons on the Adobo platform. I think what you just said there's golden for anybody that's living through something, because like you said, you've got a choice too of being a victim or a survivor. And a victimhood, it takes all your power away. It makes you depressed. You curl up in a fetal position. Whereas if you say you're going to just survive this, somehow that gives you some hope. Somehow that gives you strength. And it's in, like you said, Bruce, it's a mindset. I want to take a break there because I want to talk about how you worked your way through getting to that point to where you started seeing light at the end of the tunnel, and the light at the end of the tunnel really was the light. It wasn't a train coming. Yeah,
That's right.
I want to talk about how that happened. Folks, I want to share with you a powerful and moving new book you won't want to miss. My Name is Saffron: Voices, Silenced, Stifled, and Taken Away by author Saffron Gustafson. This isn't just a story. It's a journey through resilience, survival, and reclaiming your voice after being silenced for far too long. Saffron's story takes you inside the hidden struggles, the pain, and ultimately the triumph of refusing to be defined by circumstances. As Saffron was putting the finishing touches on her book, the prison she had just been released from, Federal Dublin FCI, was permanently closed because of sexual abuse of the women prisoners. If you've ever wondered what it takes to rise from the darkness of places, to find your truth, a lot of people don't like how they look and show up online. Many individuals think there's no hope when it comes to managing your reputation on Google. There is hope. It's called the Discoverability Company, and they can help you whether you're rebuilding reputation from scratch or you're repairing search results after a negative news story. Discoverability can also help you how you're portrayed on popular AI services like ChatGPT. To learn more, visit discoverability.co, not .com. And listeners of Nightmare Success can take $100 off with coupon code Nightmare Success. The Nightmare Success podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group, the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you there's a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you've made it through to the other side, this is a great space for you. You can join us on Zoom Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. For more information, go to prisonist.org. Okay, Bruce, so the other thing that you got to point out here, you're talking about mindset. You're probably about putting positive things on the wall for you to look at. You're in a bad place. And when you're convicted of murder, they don't just send you to a camp. You're in the worst places and very bad things happen. How did you walk through and live in that and still be someone that was focused on, I'm hopeful to get out of here. I'm figuring out how to navigate it?
I think that you said something that's important. You said you can be a victim or you can be a survivor. But there's something in addition to that I realized. I went through all of those stages. Initial stages, first couple of years, you feel like you're the victim. Along with the deceased in your case, you feel like you're the victim as well. But you learn to, as you grow, you learn to understand that, when someone loses a loved one, they don't care who pays. They don't care what happened. They just want to feel like something happened. So you begin to empathize with the family as well as those that have been victimized. So once you get past the victim stage, you enter the survival stage of your life. And you say, I'm going to survive. Come what may, whatever challenges I face, I'm going to survive. Right? And then after a while, I discovered something else. I discovered that even before prison, I had a survivor's mindset.
Yeah.
And most people in the inner cities and in the ghetto, you'll hear things like, I'm going to get mine by any means necessary. If it ain't rough, it ain't right. Which, for the most part, are just lies that we've been taught to tell ourselves. Right? If it ain't rough, it ain't. It don't have to be rough for me.
Right.
Right. I realized that I went from victim to survivor, and I no longer wanted to simply survive. I wanted to thrive, and I deserved to thrive. So as I began to study and learn and reflect on my personal life, as I begin to listen to my elders and learn from them, it's where my hope came from. Right? I went from feeling like a victim to a survivor to now becoming a thriver. And you become a thriver when you say, I'm going to change the way I look at things and things going to change the way that they look. So therefore, when you become a thriver, you don't serve time. You allow time to serve you, right? When you become a thriver, where you are doesn't define who you are or what you can become, right? When you become a thriver, you do so much more with your time and your day. Where you are, you understand that you're in a confined environment, but you still have choices as they relate to options, right? So the options that are there, you have higher education, or you can be in the yard, right? You can be hustling in the yard, right? Or you can be studying in a cell, right? So is your cell a cage, or do you transform that cell into an office, into a study hall?
Is
Or
what you did. I
is
mean,
what
you
it's
really educated yourself, Bruce, and you began to mentor so many different people while you were there. You became somebody that became a role model of showing that there's choices, and it's fascinating to me because all the while that you're doing that, you're being locked up for a crime that you didn't commit. And they weren't weeks, they weren't years, they were decades that you were in that environment. I saw something online. I just thought, I didn't know until I asked you. I thought that the TEDx talk that I was looking at and seeing on YouTube was you going back to Sing Sing after you were out and giving this incredible talk about how the system affects kids and their lives and the parents and the kids and the how we don't talk about this enough. And I was thinking, what a great thing that Bruce did to go back and talk. No, you were actually in prison at Sing Sing and gave a TED talk, which I thought was, and it was a phenomenal talk too, but unbelievable. And I think this was maybe in 2020. So you had been there for decades by that time.
Yes, I've been there over 20 years at the time. And that's what happens when you become a thriver, right? You just decide that you're not just going to survive, you're going to grow, you're going to flourish, you're going to prosper. And you begin to, to allow time to serve you. So you study and you learn your craft and you find what it is that you enjoy doing. I always tell incarcerated people that if you are cutting hair for 10 years in prison, you are a professional barber. Okay, if you have a license or not. If you're cutting hair, you're doing well, and guys are coming to you for their haircuts, right? Because in prison, guys are very concerned about their haircuts. I've seen guys get jumped on for bad haircuts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't want to get a bad haircut.
That's right. I said it to say that you can be whatever it is that you put your mind to be. And so, because Thriver, I was afforded the opportunity to compete with about 200 other men to determine whether or not I would give a talk, a TEDx talk. And I was blessed enough and fortunate enough to be one of the men that they chose to give a TEDx talk. And I really wanted it to be something that spoke directly to our communities, something that was really overlooked. And what I realized was, there were 2.7 million children in the United States who have an incarcerated.
It's a huge number.
Yes, and who suffer from unique traumas that are often overlooked or not discussed.
Well, the thing of it is when a parent goes to prison, the whole family goes to prison. It's just that they're living on the outside and they're having to deal with it in their way. But it's trauma, it's stress, it's people are mean to kids. It's a horrible situation that clearly is not talked about enough. One of the things, Bruce, is that when that was in 2020, at that time, did you start thinking that there was hope that you were making progress to getting out?
I mean, I've always had hope. I've never relinquished the hope or my faith, because there were three things that drove me while I was inside: faith, family, and freedom. These were the three things. These are the three motivating factors that kept me disciplined to continue to do the work on myself as well as on my case. However, I would be lying if I didn't say that soon after the TEDx talk that I presented on children of incarcerated parents, um, soon after COVID hit,
Right.
and COVID essentially, for me was the worst part of my life, worst part of my existence, on the planet, being incarcerated during COVID. Um, we often talk about what society was like. We often talk about the conditions, but no one has dived into what it meant to be sitting in a maximum security prison, watching the news, CNN, and seeing the communities that you come from across the world being completely empty. Um, no one has ever seen New York City with zero streets on zero cars on the streets.
Right.
Um, trucks filled with body bags in Brooklyn in front of funeral homes and funeral parlors. That brought me to, and then actually be having COVID and being afraid to to mention that I had COVID because I saw so many people get taken out.
Yeah.
Many of who passed away some 16 days later after being removed by an incarcerated person with a hazmat suit on, and a nurse with a hazmat suit on, right, and another guard with a hazmat suit on. That's how they used to remove people from their cells when they had COVID. So
Sure.
that became the biggest fear of my life, next to losing loved ones while I was incarcerated. COVID-19 rocked us to our core, and so many friends, so many loved ones, so many neighbors who said my mother passed, my brother passed,
Mm-hmm.
my entire family passed during COVID. Watching guys cry and saying, I can't get a bedside visit, writing letters for other incarcerated men, trying to galvanize support for them to have bedside video visits with their loved one who was dying because they had underlying conditions that had contracted COVID-19. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a huge fear there.
So during that fear, you end up getting a governor's pardon, clemency. Was there a connection that happened, Bruce? Who was the advocate for you between the prison cell to the governor's mansion?
Well, I have to say, I was my best advocate.
Yeah.
While I was incarcerated. I had found my voice, and began to really, really push the envelope. I wrote over 10,000 letters, but Steve Zeidman, law professor Steve Zeidman, who is by far the best clemency attorney in the country. I also had another attorney by the name of Josh Dubin, and I also had the Sean Carter Foundation, pushing the envelope for me, with the students and change.org petitions. So I had galvanized a tremendous amount of support.
Yeah.
From, with Steve Zeidman leading the charge, Josh Dubin also getting on board, and Jay-Z's mother, Dr. Carter, leading her students to be on board, through the Sean Carter Foundation.
Yeah.
Which, they've all, I'm grateful to all of them for the enormous work and push that they've given me to see me.
Well, that's why I asked you the question, because I kind of knew the backstory of that, and you had so many people that believed in you, Bruce, and believed in your story, and dedicated themselves to. But it was you reaching out and making your story heard, which you have to be your own best advocate. Tell us how you found out that you were getting out.
I got clemency in December of 2022, and I was in the gym working out. And the officer called me to the desk and said, "You got to report to the counselors unit." And I said, "Nah, I don't have a quarterly right now. I want to go finish working out, and I want to call my family."
Yeah.
So I left the desk. They called me back again and said, "You have to go. It's mandatory. You have to go see your counselor." At the time, my counselor was a lady by the name of Miss Mims in Sing Sing, maximum security prison in Ossining, New York. And Miss Mims, when I walked up there, I was sweating because I had just come from the gym. So I was kind of upset because they interrupted my workout and my phone call.
Yeah.
And she said, have a seat, Mr. Bryan. And I said, Miss Mims, just tell me what you got to tell me so I can go. I don't really want to sit down. She said, no, have a seat. And I said, come on, Miss Mims. And by the way, Miss Mims is probably the best. She was a senior counselor at the time, senior offender rehabilitation counselor. She was probably the best counselor in Sing Sing. So she said, Mr. Bryan, have a seat. So I sat down, against my will. I sat down, and she had this big computer in front of her, and she turned it, and she began reading what the governor's, it's like a seal.
Right.
She began reading the orders from the governor that said I had been granted clemency. And when I tell you that it rocked, I almost fell out the chair. Tears started coming down my eyes, and I'm thinking, how do I contain myself on my way back to that cell? Because I don't want officers and guys in prison to know what just happened. And it's going to be a lot of questions.
Sure.
When they call you out the gym and all of a sudden the counselor wants to see you,
right,
and you don't know for what, all kind of things start going through other guys' minds. Is he snitching?
He's snitching on somebody. He's telling a story.
Why are they calling him to the counselor? What's going on? We're going to ask him as soon as he gets back,
Yeah.
So I'm resting, and then I rush back. I finally get myself together and rush back and run to the phone, and I call my sister and I tell her what just happened. And then, foolishly, I tell her, don't tell mama. Which is like, how is that gonna fly over, right? So it was a moment for me. It was a moment of joy. I was ecstatic.
It's almost 3 decades.
Almost 3 decades.
Yeah. It's unreal. I mean, I can't, hearing you talk about it and feeling those feelings, I just can't imagine how that had to have felt. And then, Bruce, what was your thoughts about, like, wow, I'm out of here? What were you thinking, like, what am I going to do now? Or did you kind of have a plan on what you were wanting to do?
I knew that I was going to do what I had already been doing in prison.
Yeah.
Mentoring, starting programs, advocating. I knew that the very thing that I was doing for the last close to 3 decades, I was going to continue to do.
Yeah.
And I think most people, and this is a message for guys that are inside.
Mm-hmm.
If you do the work while you're inside, it makes your reintegration much more smoother, much more easier to be. And not saying that it would be easy at all,
right,
but it allows you to have some tools to navigate reintegration. Because that's what it's about, not reentry. Reentry is simply reentering where you left. It's
right,
about reintegration. How do you get into the dynamics of living again, right? And of thriving again, as opposed to just existing. So if you do the work, reintegration starts from the moment you become incarcerated. When you begin to reflect and engage in introspection and make the conscious decision that you want to change your life. And it starts by changing your mind, changing the way you think, and changing the way you live.
Yeah.
And doing that, sometimes it's not each day. Sometimes it's every hour.
Yeah, I so agree with that. I just had Chris Young on, and he had a phrase, your mentality is your reality. And it really is. Whatever your mentality is your reality. And it's, Bruce, on what you did is you just jumped, it's like you jumped out of a plane at 30,000 feet and landed on your feet. Let's talk about what you're doing now.
What I've been doing, right? Not serving time, allowing time to serve me. Trying to open doors for other men and incarcerated women who deserve the opportunity to thrive and to be liberated. Advocating for clemency for the countless women and men that deserve the opportunity to be with their families. Mentoring youth, just trying to have the greatest impact that I can possibly have. I've been into several prisons in Kenya and Uganda, just trying to work towards creating a better world, right? You do what you can with the time you have left, right? And I implore guys, don't serve time, let time serve you. You can have short-term goals despite being incarcerated,
Right.
right? You can have long-term goals. You can have a vision for your life. You can use a vision board. You can use affirmations and talk to yourself. Tell that person that you see in the mirror how much you love them and how important they are, and how great they are and how much of an impact they can have. You mentioned Chris Young. He's a brilliant and great and inspiring young man.
Yeah.
Who has utilized his time and his mind in the most precious way. And I congratulate him and support him, and I encourage others to support him, because we got to pull each other up and we got to support each other, because at the end of the day, we have.
Yeah. And the more voices out there, Bruce, that are like yours, right, like Chris, that can be heard, it really does affect change, and it changes people's lives. What do you think's your biggest takeaway through all this you've went through, Bruce?
My biggest takeaway is that, you got to be the change that you want to see. And when you can't necessarily change your circumstances as quickly as you would like them to, you can still change yourself.
Mm.
Right? And changing yourself and investing and pouring into yourself is the greatest asset that you can pour into.
Yeah, so true. Great advice.
Yeah. And believe in yourself. The biology of belief. Believe in yourself, and that you have the wherewithal to overcome and to transcend those prison bars, because your mind has to be liberated before you're physically liberated.
Bruce, you don't seem bitter. Do you hide it, or is it really not there?
It's simply not there. Bitterness only consumes the vessel that contains it. Mm-hmm. So I made a conscious decision to be better and not bitter.
I love that.
Right.
Be better, not bitter. Because it can eat you up. Bruce, if people want to get a hold of you, if they want you to come speak or talk to their organization, or they need help with someone that's having issues, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh, my website is currently under construction. It's called Bryan Innovative Consulting, BRYAN Innovative Consulting. Also, you can find me on LinkedIn at Bruce A. Bryan. Instagram, Bruce.Bryan24. And I'm open to being able to pour into others, not just young people, but other people.
Yeah.
Right? Because we all need a pull-up. We all need hope. And that hope comes from others. It comes from hearing other people's experiences. And so it's so important that we begin to lift each other up. Dr. Carter has a thing where she says we lift as we climb. And that's what it's about. We lift as we climb.
I love that. I want to give a shout out to Homestead Financial. Lets me use this podcast room, all the fancy lights and cameras and stuff. If you got home mortgage needs, Greg Yaftiev is your guy. If you're looking for a book out there, I still have one. It's called Nightmare Success, Loyalty, Betrayal, Life Behind Bars, Adapting, and Finally Breaking Free. If you got time, leave me a review on Apple. And if you want to know what I've got going on, sprintcassidy.com. And as I used to say, and I spell it wrong, I spell it with a TY, not a DY. As I used to say to my people when I was writing my emails back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong, I'll do the same. Bruce, Bryan, man, you are a good man. Thank you so much for making time to do this and tell and share your story. Appreciate it.
And you're a good man too, Brent. And what you're doing is so important. Being that voice and providing this platform so that other people can learn from others, and we can share these stories and hope to amplify our voices and change the conditions of our people one person at a time. Thank you so much.
Love it. Nightmare Success, in and out.
Thank you. Thank you.